Good morning. In about 48 hours, the polls will open. Michiganders will finally have an opportunity to cast their ballots in the general election and make their voices heard. What's at stake and what should you know before exercising your constitutional right to vote? Our roundtable will sort it all out. Howard Edelson, Rochelle Riley, Ingrid Jocks, Dave Dulio, Al B.J. Williams, and Ross Jones will be with us. It's Sunday, November the 4th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is a Spotlight on the News Democracy 2018 Election Special.
Change is going to come. Hope will start happening again. That's what your vote can do. Let's get to work, Michigan.
You can either vote for Democrat mob rule, or you can vote for a Republican Party that stands proudly for law and order, fairness, freedom, and justice.
And welcome to Spotlight. Big crew today as we approach the general election. All right, let me start off. First of all, welcome to all of you. Show of hands. Who's ready for this election to be over? All right. Who wants to see one more political ad? Okay, I kind of thought that would be the case. As we approach this, what's going to drive this election? Rochelle Riley?
It's all about turnout. If the people who are not happy with the direction that things are going, if the people who constantly talk about how the popular vote was ignored as if they don't understand how our political system works, if people who really do want change decide that they're going to vote, it will matter. If people do not vote, as is typical, the last midterms, for instance, turnout in Wayne County was 31%. And quite frankly, you had a 2016 election that everybody thought would be huge, not Obama huge, but huge, and it was less than half in Wayne County. So the bottom line is, it's turnout no matter what.
Will this be driven by policy, or will it be driven by personality? On the one end, we're hearing Republicans say it's about immigration, and we're hearing Democrats say it's about health care.
Personality.
Yeah, personality. First, once you get past personality, Donald Trump, then you can get into the policy, healthcare, education, jobs, and other issues. But you have to cut through the Trump factor.
Professor Dulio, has Donald Trump done a good job at taking an issue of immigration and making it an issue that people will come out to vote with beyond his base? We're talking about that middle ground. Is the passion there?
The midterms are always base elections, right? I mean, when we have turnout at the levels that we typically see over the last 20 years, midterm turnouts averaged across the country 40%, right? That's leaving out 60% of the rest of the country that just doesn't have the time to bother with it. And that 40% is usually mostly base voters. So it is not a surprise to see President Trump hitting on the immigration issue. That riles up the Republican base. That's red meat for the base. And it's not surprising to see Democrats, President Obama, rallying his troops, talking about health care and other issues that appeal to their base.
Well, the rhetoric has been that Democrats are very motivated from pretty much the moment Donald Trump got elected. I mean, there's been a lot of emphasis on this blue wave that's coming. Even a pink wave. We've seen record numbers of women candidates run. See that definitely in Michigan. The top three statewide contenders on the Democratic side are women. So I think that's going to be of real interest to see if women and Democrats really do show up and express this frustration that we've been hearing about.
Blue wave in Michigan is real. I think the pink wave is, especially in Oakland County, is just as important. Turnout is important. And in Detroit, I think you're going to have a black wave, which is important as well.
Why?
Because people are agitated. African Americans are agitated, and that's what's going to help push turnout in Detroit and in the metropolitan areas. People are agitated about Donald Trump and his style of leadership. People are agitated on issues and policies not coming through for them. And I think this year, for the midterms, you're going to have a higher turnout for African Americans. And as Rochelle Wiley has put it multiple times, the black wave is coming.
Ross Jones, you've been doing these fact-check reports about the political ads. We have a record number of ads on the air. Obviously, people are putting money into it because they think it's making a difference. Yeah. Is it really making a difference with the average voter, or are they so confused that they just say, heck, I'm just going to do what my gut tells.
Well, I think like you and me, they're really excited for the day after the election so they can have to stop looking at these. I think it's going to come down to which side is more concerned about the other side's motivation. I really think that's what it's going to be, because for the longest time we heard about the blue wave. The blue wave seemed like that was going to be the thing. Then the Kavanaugh hearings happened. Then there was a red wave. And now it seems like both sides are kind of looking to see.
In a purple state.
Are they more excited than we are? Yeah. So I genuinely think that concern is what's going to drive both sides out, and we're going to see who's more worried about the other team.
Republicans are getting more motivated, but again, it depends how long that enthusiasm can be maintained and if they do actually show up.
Hang on one second. I got to get to a break. When we come back, I'll pick up with Dave Dulio, and we'll drill down on some of these important statewide races. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Spotlight. Before we went to the break, I rudely cut off Professor Dave Dulio. I'll pick up with you.
Very quickly, Chuck, just to say I agree with Ingrid that I think the enthusiasm gap between the parties is evolving and has changed over the last several months. Democrats had a big lead, Republicans caught up after the Kavanaugh hearings, but I wonder what has happened given the events of the week before, the bombings or the attempted bombings of Democrats and the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. That may, I'm starting to get the sense that that is dampening the enthusiasm of some, and that might have an impact here as we head into Election Day.
Okay, two quick questions before we get to the state races. The birthright issue. President Trump has said by executive order, he's going to rewrite the Constitution. Do y'all think that's possible?
He's just trying to motivate. Yeah, it is. He's just trying to motivate his base. It seems kind of desperate to me.
Is he just outright lying?
Well, he's not lying because, as he says, he does try to tell the truth. But I think that this is just the latest distraction as he's trying to make sure that his base knows that he's going to go after anybody and anything that they don't like, to get them excited. Right. You know, this is a guy who attacked Gold Star soldiers, the disabled, women, dreamers, babies. So, you know, it's like just the latest thing. Who do you not like? I'll go after them for you.
All right. Health care, we know, is a big issue. At least the Democrats say it's a big issue. Republicans have tried numerous times to overturn the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whichever term you're most comfortable with. But now we got a lot of Republican candidates saying, trust me to protect pre-existing conditions. Are they to be believed?
No, not at all. It's another campaign ploy. You know, Republicans for a long time have tried to take issues that Democrats have owned and make it their own during midterm elections. This is just another one of those opportunities for them to take the issue at hand, healthcare issue that Gretchen Whitmer really owns, and try and own it for themselves and push their base out and get some independent voters.
And these are the very same people, as you mentioned, Chuck, who tried to repeal Obamacare multiple times, and now they're coming back, and it's kind of a CYA because they read the polls and they know that if they don't address this, they're being attacked for it, they're going to go down and lose.
But Ingrid, could this also be an opportunity for them to be able to say, okay, we weren't crazy about Obamacare, but you know what, we're taking this one particular part that's important to people, and we've got the power to be able to protect it because we got the votes up there.
Sure. I mean, I think everyone realizes healthcare is a very important issue, and it's become a prominent one in this election. And I think Republicans have found out firsthand that it's very hard to make adjustments even to something that was so unpopular, especially among conservatives with the Affordable Care Act. It's very hard to change once it's in place. But I think hopefully most of us can agree that there are changes needed to the Affordable Care Act, and it's just going to be about the best way to make that happen. But I think things like pre-existing conditions probably aren't going to go away.
All right, we've seen the polls on the state races all over the map, from wide leads to a very tight race. Whitmer, Schuette, Howard, going down the pipe. You've been in this position before with Jennifer Granholm 2 days before election. What are you telling the candidates?
Telling the candidates stay with the program, it's working, and it's all about now getting our base out, our voters out on election day. And I think she's going to win.
All right. Bill Schuette, what does he have to do right about now?
Put the fire out. That's what he needs to do. You know, the Republican Party in the state of Michigan, it's on fire. and he needs to do whatever he can to stop the blue wave, black wave, and pink wave from taking hold over the next few days. And so they're going to have to, everybody in the Republican Party needs to pick up a hose or a bucket and start putting that fire out in order for them to save face, save some seats in the House, save some seats in the Senate, and possibly pick up a Secretary of State or maybe save one of the Supreme Court seats.
All right, we've seen at least in the Epic MRA Detroit Free Press poll that the one race that was dead heat was for the Attorney General for this state, between Leonard and Nessel. That's got to motivate both sides to get out there and vote if it's that close, right, Dave Duke?
So absolutely, that's one of those that is a base race, right? We tend to think of governors and even lieutenant governors, maybe certainly United States Senate, but you get down to those more, I hate to call them bureaucratic offices, but they're service offices in the state where they are carrying out things that in the executive branch, the chief lawyer, right, there's not a whole lot of issues one can run on, and the candidates are trying to do it, but those are the races I think that are base races 100%. It'll be interesting to see too, I think that this is a race along with the U.S. Senate race where we can see the impact of straight party ticket voting being off the ballot having an impact.
First time in, what, 127 years? Yeah, that's going to be a real adjustment for people.
Absolutely. People aren't used to it, or some folks aren't used to it. That could have an impact down the ballot.
President Trump will not be coming in?
No.
Down to the wire.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But he's got lots of his surrogates coming through here, and the same with the Democrats. Ross Jones, you did these fact check reports. Of the reports, which ones stand out the most that viewers should be most concerned about?
Well, if you see a negative ad, I can pretty much guarantee you that it is taking some sort of a grain of truth and coming up with a pretty interesting narrative. And I'm also trying to figure out which race Nancy Pelosi is running for in Michigan. I haven't figured that out yet, but she's on every ad.
She's in everybody's ad.
Everybody's ad.
I mean, one of the ads people have talked to me the most about is one that has really been picking up steam lately that says Haley Stevens, who's running against Lena Epstein, is a carpetbagger who lives in her parents' basement. Now, being a carpetbagger used to be enough of an attack ad, but now you have to live in your parents' basement. Basically says that she just showed up and is now living in her mom's house. The truth of the matter is, she grew up in Michigan, graduated from Seaholm High School, went to Washington, worked there for many years, came back last year, and then obviously has been running for office. But if you watch that ad, you don't get that impression. There have also been some interesting ads about Gretchen Whitmer that have been coming on lately, saying that she wants to do a pretty radical government health care takeover. She's not running for president. She's not running for any federal office that will allow her to do that. She did give some very tepid endorsement to single-payer health care if the federal government wanted to do that someday, but she has no control over that. But if you watch these ads, you get the impression, and that's true on the Republican side as well, that everybody's much more extreme than they actually are.
Hang on one second, Howard. I'm going to get to a break and we'll come back and see what's in your mind, and we'll talk about some of these proposals. We've got 3 statewide proposals, and some of them are probably confusing the heck out of everybody. We'll be right back. All right, Howard, I cut you off this time, so I'm just trying to be fair with it, doing it to everybody.
Thank you. I was just going to add, there are a lot of ads, and so people who are watching them should kind of filter through. Do these ads have the source cited for the information to back up their claim? And if they don't, then it's probably not a very good ad, or it's not true.
I want to add one little thing. People are not willing to do the drill down to try and figure out. They're looking at these ads, they gravitate to the ones they think are true, and they may not ever really know whether it's factual or not, but both parties need to be careful about painting with too broad a brush. For instance, the GOP may lose the votes of many millennials living with their parents. There's nothing wrong with living in your parents' basement, but if you make that look like that's something horrible, you know, you don't know how you're affecting real people. So be careful of what you're seeing on television if you're not willing to at least see where it came from.
That would be important if millennials actually turned out to vote.
And that's one of the things.
What do you think? Do you think there's a good chance they'll come out? I mean, they're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram all the time, but will they get to the polls?
Ingrid just
said marijuana is on the ballot, so
millennials will be voting this time.
But we'll see. They support legalizing recreational marijuana. What, like 85%? Our latest poll showed. So, I mean, it depends if they actually show up and vote like they say they're going to.
And do you think they go all the way through the ballot, or they just go in and vote for proposal 1 and say, okay, I'm done?
There's a
I don't
chance
think so.
that
I think that they will do. A lot of them will not vote the entire ballot. A lot of them will not flip the ballot over and vote for the judges on that side of the ballot, who they are going to meet probably and see before they see the governor and/or a U.S. senator. Probably the most important part of the ballot. I also don't think that that the proposal 1 is the driving force behind millennials getting out to vote. I think part of the driving force behind millennials getting out to vote is so many young people on the ballot, especially in metropolitan Detroit. You have school board members, charter commission members, and the possibility of having the first African-American lieutenant governor in the state of Michigan, who is also not necessarily a millennial, but he's a younger candidate.
Well, and that's one of the things I was going to bring up. Okay, so there's a possibility of making history in this election, whether it's Garland Gilchrist as the #2 person on the Democratic side for the governor's race, or whether or not it's John James upseating an entrenched entrenched Democrat incumbent with Debbie Stabenow, and that would make history too. Are those resonating with African Americans, and will one bring them out more than the other?
I think they are resonating. Yeah, I can
tell you the black wave that I talked about, it's a national wave. So people are looking to say, how many people of color can we vote for around the country? And there are people who are either considering for or have already voted for John James because he is African American, because they love his parents who are stalwarts in Oakland County. I don't know if it's a lot of people. I don't know.
You could make double history here. You could put Whitmer and Gilchrist in, and you could put John James in.
For some people, that matters. I know people like to dismiss that. Some political experts say, oh no, that's not real. I have longtime friends who are Democrats who have already voted for John James because they want to see that happen, and then they hope they'll change his mind later.
He's been working hard in Detroit to get his message out and going to lots of events in the city. So, I mean, he's been trying to reach Detroit voters. You know, even though the odds politically are against him, he's been spending time there.
Howard, that would be a major upset, wouldn't it?
It would. I don't think it's going to happen. The poll shows that Debbie Stabenow is ahead by 16 points, and she's well-funded. And
you believe she's that far ahead?
I do. I don't think I think it'll close by election day, but the recent polls that just came out have her 16 points up.
As someone who doesn't believe in polls, I don't think it's about the, I don't think it's about the polls. I think it's about Debbie Stabenow being a veteran politician who has spent a lot of time in Wayne County, Oakland County, and rallying her base and reminding people of what she's done. So if she wins, it won't be because people in a poll said so, because a whole lot of black folks aren't in polls.
I think it comes down to name recognition.
The polls measure her fighting for Michigan and Washington and bringing things back.
But we've seen upsets.
So that's the only.
And Senator Stabenow is popular in the places that Republicans need to do well in order to win these statewide races. She's popular in the Thumb and up north with agriculture. That is really what I think makes her such a safe bet to win, right? I mean, John James is going to eat into that lead, and because he's going to pull some African American votes out of Detroit, in part because of that disappearance of the straight party ticket section.
He won't win, but it'll be closer than people think.
I think John James is he's presented himself well. He's done a lot of work, but I think he's too little, too late, and not big enough to fight the establishment of Debbie Stabenow.
All right, let's slip in one more pause for the cause. We'll come back, and we haven't talked about Proposal 2 and Proposal 3. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back. Proposal 2, probably the most confusing of the 3 proposals. I find people coming up and just saying, I'm not sure which way to vote here. I'm not sure who to believe here. You did some fact checking.
Yeah, and the proposals have really gotten lost in the shuffle of all
this. That's the reason you say that's for redistricting.
Indeed.
The gerrymandering. Which way will the future go?
Yeah, one of the ads we fact checked is an anti-Proposal 2 ad, and they're not really attacking the substance of what Proposal 2 would do. They're attacking sort of the structure. They're attacking these 13 mystery people that'll be appointed that they could theoretically
say will be unpoliced. They can spend as much money as they want.
They can spend as much. They can pay themselves whatever they want. All these unlimited perks. If you look at the language, I guess you could argue theoretically that is possible, but this is going to be something that's going to be so highly looked at by all of us, by reporters. That's a pretty unlikely thing, but that's what they're really attacking is, well, the worst case scenario if you appoint all these new people is who knows what they're going to do. They haven't gone after the actual substance of what they're trying to do as it relates to gerrymandering.
If Proposal 2 wins, is Katie Fahey, is she become the newsmaker of the year? I mean, this person who just grassroots, no political ties, comes out of nowhere, and takes on the Michigan Supreme Court and everybody else and gets this proposal through? They do?
Well, I think it'll pass. I think all three will pass. But that's not the end of the story, right? Especially on 2, look out for a wave of litigation.
Right.
Sure.
That's gonna, and there are, it's what, 3,000 words long, the proposal. That just means there's more to sue about.
And you got to debate over the minority-majority districts, and
there's
is that
all
being
sorts of
protected
things
under the voters' rights?
Right, all sorts of
Your
things.
question is yes on Katie, because that's the best of America, when an average person can step up and say, something needs to be changed, let's try it. It's like the Affordable Care Act. It's not perfect, but at least there's an attempt to change something that is very wrong.
Proposal 3, promote the vote, opening up the process, supposedly making it easier for people to vote. How could anybody argue against that, but yet we are seeing opposition? Right?
I don't know how you argue against opening and making access to the ballot easier unless you are, just as Ms. Riley has said, against more African Americans coming out to vote. Same-day voter registration, no reason, absentee voting. I mean, those are all reasons to get people more engaged. If you're against getting people more engaged, then you're fighting against what we believe in democracy.
Is opening up the system, is fraud a real legitimate issue here, or is that a scare tactic?
I mean, I think it's worth raising the question and be really fundamentally changing how Michigan does elections. But I think the legislature really brought this on itself when, a few years ago, when it passed straight ticket voting, and that has been a several-year legal battle now in effect. At the same time, they should have opened up voting in other ways. No reason absentee voting, making it easier for people to vote around the state, and that was a mistake. Most other states have eased that process in some way. So now it's going to backfire on them because this will be a big Democratic driver.
Absolutely. All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Wish we could go another half hour. We'll do that next election. Howard, Rochelle, Ingrid, Dave, Al, Ross, thanks so much for joining us. And we want to thank you at home for joining us. Remember, Tuesday, November the 6th is Election Day. The polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. Get out, do your constitutional right to vote, express your feelings, and that's the best way to do it in a democratic society. And stay tuned to Channel 7 and Channel 20 and WXYZ.com for all of the most comprehensive coverage on election night. I'm Chuck Stokes. Have a good week.